talk to you first about the Democratic Party a little bit. There was a Gallup poll that came out last week that said that confidence in Democratic leadership has actually dropped to an all-time low, and a lot of people are kind of worried that the Democrats really aren't meeting the moment. Now, just as for a little bit of context here, I do think that there have been more and more Democrats who have been stepping up recently, so I think there's a little bit of nuance to this conversation. But at large, a lot of people are a little kind of concerned that maybe more Democrats aren't doing enough to combat everything that we are seeing with the Trump administration right now. Chuck Schumer came on to CNN this past weekend and said that he sent a strongly worded letter to Donald Trump in regards to everything that's been going on recently. And I thought it was a meme, but he was very serious. Eliza, what are your thoughts though? Like, how do you feel about how the Democrats are kind of like meeting this moment right now, particularly with the leadership?
Well, I mean, I have expressed my frustrations with the leadership, especially with Chuck Schumer personally, because I felt, for the Democrats to not use that moment where they were going to pass this CR, where they could have easily obstructed in that circumstance. And
Yeah,
instead, they just gave away the House for no reason. And I think they have to be using every tool possible, even things that some folks are calling performative, actually
yeah,
do make a real difference and make a real impact. But just capitulating to the Republicans is not it. That is not the leadership we need in this moment. And I have been, like many others, increasingly frustrated with some Democrats, but I am also heartened to see a number of Democrats who have been really pretty extraordinary, who've really been stepping up in a way that is very impressive.
yeah. No, I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of people stepping up more recently, especially in the last like month or so. We're seeing Bernie Sanders, AOC going on their fight the oligarchy tour. I've been seeing Maxwell Frost. He has been out there all over the place. Jasmine Crockett's been a staple from the beginning. I'm
Totally.
seeing
But you can't
Rokana
leave.
go out there. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. But you can't leave out the fact that like Senator Van Hollen flew to
right.
El Salvador, demanded to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, like demand is
Yes,
really fighting hard. And I think, we can't discount what Governor Pritzker is doing these days, who is
yes.
really, I think, been such a force. And, I'm saying this as a lifelong New Yorker that I'm admiring the leadership in Chicago and also in Boston, in Massachusetts. Like Senator Warren is out there speaking out, and, I'm really impressed with some of the Democrats and less so with others.
Yeah, so I think for me, what this comes down to is the fact that it seems like if we were to go through a list right now, it probably feels like it's closer to maybe 20, maybe 30 that we are seeing who are consistently kind of going out there, using their voice, using their platform, using the pulpit, essentially, the platform that they have. And there's over 250 of them in Congress. And so, I mean, what what do Democrats need to be doing right now that they're not doing, like in your opinion?
Well, I think that some of this is that there's things that some of us have been screaming about for a decade, but that the Democrats are finally getting on board. I mean, you can talk about Joe Rogan, you can talk about the Tates, you can talk about all of these right wing, Candace Owens, all these right wing creators who have
Yeah,
really built up huge platforms and who are able to elevate their electeds through those platforms. And on the left, we have had a lot harder of a time doing that. It's more decentralized, but folks are starting to get the message and say, okay, I have to be media literate. I have to be social media literate. I have to be
right.
out there doing direct to camera videos showing the things that I am doing. And it's actually been really impressive seeing them partner with big content creators on the left and really start making a concerted effort to get clips out there, to do lives, to do big actions that do create buzz on social media, because more and more young people aren't subscribed to cable television. They're not watching MSNBC, so it matters when people are on social media.
Yeah. There is, I think, a constant conversation that goes on about like, oh, well, the Democrats, their real problem is they're just not getting their message out there. And other people will say like, okay, it's not just that. They're also having a lot of the wrong messages in a lot of places. W- Where do you kind of fall on that? Do you think it's kind of more of that, oh, they just need to like really get out in front of these people and talk more on TikTok and talk more on Instagram and do YouTube videos? Or is it a sense of like maybe they're a little disconnected from their base? Because I got to tell you, it for me, it feels like there's kind of a bit of both going on here. But how do you feel about
I agree with you. I think it's a bit of both, and I think it depends on the person, because I think
it? Yeah,
sometimes it's the message and sometimes it's the messenger that is
yeah,
the issue. And I think sometimes the fact of the matter is the Republican budget that was proposed today, the reason why uh, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Booker did a sit in for over 12 hours on the Capitol steps yesterday was because the Republicans are trying to cut 880 billion with a B dollars, which is going to require huge cuts to Medicaid, which is going to
Yeah.
require cuts to food assistance for children and veterans, which is going to require um, you know, it's like Medicaid to seniors. I mean, it's just there's so much, and mothers, it's just so much that is going to hurt the average person, everyday working Americans, that it's the Democrats not getting that message out that has been so problematic because that is a popular message. They are supporting the overwhelming majority of Americans. People want that stuff. People don't want SNAP benefits cut. They don't want food assistance cut for children. Most people aren't heartless and cruel, but the Democrats aren't getting out there being like, this is what the Republicans are actually trying to do. And that's why I like really, even though some people called it performative, I loved what Jeffries and Booker did yesterday, spending over 12 hours highlighting the stories of real Americans, really having families sit with them of children with disabilities and talk about how this is going to impact their lives and their families.
Yeah. I think this kind of comes back to the conversation that we were having just a second ago about getting their message out there to different people and to more people. Because it's not just that like people don't really know what the Republicans are trying to do. I think it's also the fact that the Republicans have an amazingly powerful machine behind them. Like they are able to go out there and propagate their message in completely
Yeah,
misinformation and disinformation across the entire like internet spectrum. I mean, through the podcast
exactly.
circuit, through on X, I mean, on YouTube. I mean, everywhere you see it. They're able to go on all these different platforms and basically tell you like, oh, we're not really cutting Medicaid. We're getting those able-bodied men back to work. Like, oh, we're not cutting SNAP benefits. We're trying to clean up government waste here. Like they are able to essentially lie about what they are doing and tell millions and millions of people about said lie. And before anyone can even fact check them, like there's so many people who already believe the Republicans are doing this benevolent thing. So
Right.
I'm just wondering like what it's going to take in order for I think Democrats to essentially create something just as powerful to combat all of the disinformation. I think that that has to be paramount going forward.
I completely agree. And listen, we are a decade behind. The Republicans have been
Yeah,
building this media infrastructure on the right for over a decade. I mean, Turning Point USA, if you look at the way that these
right.
PragerU, all these right-wing platforms have been building for such a long time that it's very difficult for the Democrats to compete with that. But I
Yeah,
do think that finally we are seeing certain stories break through. I mean, we've already talked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but that
right.
story has broken through. Some of the Pete Hegseth stuff seems to have broken through. I think the arrest of a judge is very alarming to a lot of people, although maybe not quite enough
Not
yet, because
enough.
that is so deeply disturbing to me. And then, the deportation of American citizen children, toddlers, a 4-year-old with metastatic cancer. I mean, the cruelty is unimaginable. And I hope that more and more these stories start taking hold and that the average person is like, oh, wow, I have to engage. And the Democrats and the Republicans are not the same.
Yeah, I want to come back to that judge question here for a second, but I see someone here in the comments who says the question becomes why are the Democrats a decade behind? That's honestly a great question. I
Well, I,
really don't know the answer to that. I mean, because I feel like on one hand, Eliza, it's like it feels like it's so obvious that their tactics for how they were trying to get their message out there were being ineffective. And on the other hand, it's almost like maybe they knew and they just didn't care. Like, I mean, like this comes back to the leadership question again, right? Because I
yeah.
think a lot of people in the Democratic Party understood that what they were doing wasn't working. They're kind of taking it upon themselves to do something different. And on the other hand, I'm just like, is there a plan here that you're just not sharing, or is the plan to be in effect? Like what is going on here, Chuck Schumer? I really want to know the answer to that question.
I think that something that people are um the listen, I'm not sure if I'm completely correct on the facts here, and I don't
Yeah,
actually spread misinformation, so I want to fact check this, and we'll like I'll put it in the comments. But if you look at the I think it's like a mean or median or average age of Democrats, elected Democrats versus Republicans,
yeah,
Republicans invest in younger leadership. They invest
Hmm.
in people who are going to be rising stars within their party. They invest in, getting people involved early, and therefore they understand the value in social media, and they really recognize that a long time ago. Whereas the
Yeah,
Democrats have this, rapidly aging population leading our party, and a lot of those people are clinging to power in a way that does not allow for the youth. It's not the Bernie Sanders who's like, let me take your hand and elevate you along with me. It's
right.
other people who are like, no, no, like we need to keep our power and not allow young people to kind of rise within the party.
Yeah, it's such a huge problem. But I hope that as we continue talking about this more and more, that will kind of like force their hand to change because they're seeing just how many people are upset with the current direction of the party. I mean, I am outright seeing people who I would always describe as, like Democratic loyalists, vote blue no matter who, just like basically people who are very fervently behind the Democratic Party, just outright calling for leadership to be replaced. And so I think that they're feeling the pressure right now. I hope that it leads to more positive change.